what's up everybody? Welcome to FoundFlix. On this Ending Explained, we'll be looking at Escape Room, the close quarters thriller where a group of strangers find themselves trapped in a deadly game. While the movie is certainly quite simple, it's pretty much just strung together sequences of different themed rooms and puzzles for our characters to tackle. These assorted sequences are surprisingly quite thrilling and creative, and definitely the standout aspect to the movie, because everything else is pretty meh. From the characters who are no more than paper-thin pawns in the game, to the outright silly and at times even questionable dialogue. Also, perhaps the most glaring is the trap/puzzle room idea itself is obviously quite derivative, owing a huge debt to both the Saw and Cube series, which is very hard to ignore. It's almost like Sony wanted their own cheap horror franchise and were like, screw it! Let's just rip off Saw and change just a few things. This becomes even more apparent when the bigger story at hand is revealed, clearly hinting towards further sequels to expand upon what is set up at the end. So let's solve the twisted puzzles of Escape Room, breaking down the plot, how these strangers are connected, and explaining the ending that hints towards a much bigger game at play. The film actually begins near the end of our characters' times in the escape room, as a frenzied young man, Ben, falls into a well-furnished study and quickly scans the room for clues to unlock his way out, finding a puzzle with various numbers to slide into positions. When sliding the first, the wall of the room begins to close in on him, crushing everything in its path. Eventually out of room to move, Ben is pinned between both walls on the verge of being crushed. But before we learn his ultimate fate, we flash back to 3 days earlier, filling us in on how our main characters found their ways respectively to the escape room facility. For Ben, his life seemed to be pretty much on a one-way track to Nowheresville, working as a stock boy whose boss is so uncertain of he won't even consider Ben for a cashier position. But considering that we see he has been drinking while working, his boss is probably in the right here. The next morning at work, there's an odd black box waiting for him, supposedly from his boss. But before opening it, we see that Ben isn't the only one to have been given a black box. As we then move on to the bright young college student Zoey, seen in class that she knows the answer to a question no one else does, but is too debilitatingly shy to even speak out in front of others, who after class is encouraged by her professor to branch out and do something out of her comfort zone over the Thanksgiving break. And as her roommate leaves to go home, there's a similar box there for Zoey from her professor. And finally there's Jason, a whiz kid stockbroker first seen closing a huge deal, who gets an odd present from his boss as congratulations, the same peculiar black puzzle box. Each manages to get it open in their own respective ways that help us understand their respective personalities. Zoey through her formulas and research, Jason cheating by following a puzzle box YouTube tutorial, and Ben by accidentally smashing it open with a hammer, which is probably what I would have tried. Each are personally invited to the Minos escape room, where the first person to escape will be rewarded with $10,000. All arriving at the nondescript Minos facility, there are 3 others who weren't given introduction like those just covered, so I knew they wouldn't be around too long. There's Amanda, ex-army, who seems to have a problem with fire. Super escape room aficionado Danny, who successfully completed over 90 escape rooms. And Mike, who while rough around the edges seems like a good guy, saying that his nephew got him to try this out, having no idea what he's getting himself into. Well, as it happens, no one has any idea what they're in for, as this escape room isn't about fun and games, as they're about to find out. Sitting in the waiting room, Ben gets antsy wanting to go out for a cigarette, but the door handle breaks off in his hand, revealing what looks like an oven temperature control knob. Searching the room for potential clues, Amanda flips through magazines, seeing they're all addressed to the same person, Dr. Wu Tan Yu, a name that pops up in every one of the further escape rooms at some point, and thusly seems like he must be pretty important. Meanwhile, Zoey spots a copy of the book Fahrenheit 451, determining this must be the setting for the knob, which instead turns on several heating panels in the room, starting to slowly increase the temperature. Amanda, already getting upset by the increasing heat, tries to ask someone sitting on the other side of a window for help, to no response. And after finding a key in the pin of a fire extinguisher, they unlock the window, and it's not a woman at all, but a mannequin, a voice on the other end of the phone telling them to follow the rules, which definitely doesn't sound like something Jigsaw would say whatsoever. Hanging up causes more heat panels to turn on, the temperature getting closer to roasting them alive, and when getting a panicked Amanda a glass of water, Zoey spots what the call was referring to, a sign on the wall requesting them to use coasters. When she pushes on them on the table, an air duct behind a painting slightly opens. They figure out how to use cups of of water to keep all 6 coasters pushed down, allowing each of them to escape. And for the final glass, as they're out of water, poor Ben has to sacrifice the booze in his flask to get out just as the room is engulfed in flames. Finding themselves now in a log cabin, the group is mortified by what just happened, that the game appears to be real with deadly stakes, though Danny disagrees and laments on being trapped with a bunch of whiners who don't get escape rooms. Okay, well they did just burn an entire room to the ground, but yeah, I'm sure you're right, buddy. A combination lock on the door is opened, and they step outside into what looks like a wintry, snowy landscape with frozen ground surrounding them. But it's partially faked, with high-tech screens learned when Danny bumps into the edge barrier. The opposite of the previous room, here the temperature is slowly dropping below freezing. When looking for what the next puzzle is, Mike finds a fishing pole, aided by Zoey thanks to a clue scrawled on the side of a boat. Finding a stuffed polar bear and retrieving a magnet from its mouth. Using the magnet and pole in a fishing hole in the ground, they pull out a key frozen in a block of ice. Luckily, Ben is a smoker with a lighter, but when Danny asks him to toss it over, it doesn't quite make it, and he walks over to pick it up only for the ice to explode beneath his feet, trapping him in the freezing water, and within moments, he is dead. Well, a lot of good being a so-called expert, did you, Danny? Since you're dead. They're forced to use their body heat to slowly melt the ice, the temperature in the room dropping below zero. Once getting the key out and using it, another door opens on the other side, the ice beginning to quickly explode out beneath them, all still making it safely across to the next room, which is probably the coolest looking in the film. A billiards bar, but everything is upside down and bolted to the ceiling many feet up. On the phone this time, they're told to watch their step, as a piece of the bottom drops out, revealing a very long drop below. Zoey gets to work on a sliding puzzle on the wall, which when assembled corresponds to specific colored billiard balls, which are used as the code of a 4-digit safe. Amanda finds the missing 8-ball inside that will act as the door handle. The ground continues to fall away piece by piece, Amanda tumbling down and almost losing the 8-ball in the fall. But she grabs it, quickly tossing it to Jason before the final piece falls beneath her, hanging on desperately to the extremely strong phone cord for dear life. They do attempt to rescue her, but the cord finally breaks, sending Amanda plummeting to her doom. Entering room number 4, the door marked triage, referring to the sorting of injured people based on their level of emergency, which has particular poignancy here for each of our players, as in the room are recreations of their own hospital rooms from their own time in the hospital, here learning what it is that ties these strangers together. Each was the lone survivor in a deadly accident or situation. Mike was a coal miner who got trapped in the tunnels after a collapse, and everyone else died, including his brother. Ben had just gotten his license and went out for a joyride with friends, but he'd been drinking, and they of course have a crash, of which he was the only survivor. Jason claims he was trapped on an overturned boat with a friend, saying that they had to share one red jacket, the same found in a previous room, only for his friend to go nuts and swim off, though Jason was still later saved. For Zoey, it was a plane wreck, and as they learned for Amanda, an IED explosion, and Danny, a carbon monoxide poisoning that took his entire family. So now we understand this is the reason they were chosen for the escape room, and whoever is behind it knows everything about them and their lives, as each room contained extremely specific references to their past, and they ultimately want to see which one of these sole survivors would come out on top in this extreme scenario. A TV in the room flips on, featuring a heart surgery, and a timer of 5 minutes begins, along with the message to put their hearts into it. Zoey believes they should actually stop playing the game and proceeds to smash all the cameras around the room watching them, while Jason and Mike make use of defibrillators, surging Mike to increase his heartbeat to dangerous levels, and pushes him too far, causing Mike to flatline and die. But Jason is undeterred, thinking it might also need an extremely low heart rate reading as well, hooking himself up to the machine, calming his heart rate, which works, and the door opens, also unleashing poisonous gas into the room. Ben begs Zoey to come with them, but she's still too preoccupied smashing things, and they are forced to leave her behind, collapsing and foaming at the mouth after they leave, though seeing the last camera she smashed actually contained an oxygen mask. Down to the final 2, they are now in a trippy black and white pattern room with a hatch in the floor. Ben chides Jason for his callous behavior, which led to Mike's death, but he retorts that Ben can't take the moral high ground here since he was responsible for all of his friends' deaths in the crash. And Ben now realizes that Jason lied about what happened in his story of survival, that Jason is the one who turned hostile, just as now only caring about his own fate, and actually killed his friend so he could keep the one jacket for himself, ensuring that he made it out of the situation alive. They still have to work together to open the hatch, and they're surprised to see a strange liquid on their hands, which in a kind of fun and bizarre twist is some kind of hallucinogenic drugs, and the two start to trip absolute balls. There's only one antidote scapegoat though, leading to a brawl between them, and ultimately Ben takes out Jason for good when his head smashes into a table, and leaving this room takes him to the study of the beginning. Yet he didn't get crushed as presumed, utilizing a shield on display to pass through the fireplace, and reaching what must be the end of the game, now in the makeshift control room center in a large warehouse, where he meets the game master who has been operating their trip through each of the rooms, and he explains the ridiculous sinister reason for their trials, that the Minos escape room is a game designed to entertain a select group of very rich patrons who pick a kind of theme for each round of contestants to go through their own personalized puzzle rooms, this time being sole survivors, making reference to previous contestants like athletes and savants. Okay, so this was all for some rich a-hole's amusement, but Ben still won fair and square, right? He's the last survivor. Where's that 10K you promised me, buddy? But instead of handing over the cash, he attacks Ben, strangling him. But a surprisingly alive Zoey, who used that breathing apparatus in the previous room and busted her way out, shoots the game master. Ben's still knocked out. He wrangles the gun away from Zoey, but before he can shoot her, Ben awakes and smashes his head with a glass container and shoots him, killing him. Miraculously, the board on screen declares them both to be the winners, and the two promptly leave and head to the hospital to deal with Ben's injuries. Getting the police involved to investigate what happened, Zoey returns to the Minos building, but finds it completely abandoned, with no evidence of anything left behind. Boy, these guys are sure quick at cleanup, though there is a peculiar graffiti tag that catches her attention, reading "No Way Out," which upon further inspection she realizes is an anagram of Dr. Wu Tan-Yu, whose name was seen several times throughout the various escape rooms, and with this tiny clue left behind for Zoey, most likely Yu is the true mastermind behind these games. But with no evidence, there's nothing the police can do. But Zoey isn't about to give up on finding out who they are, seeing her meet up with Ben 6 months later, who now is doing much better than before, as a salesman for vegan dog food. Moving up in the world, dude. It seems Zoey has been busy too, pulling out a binder full of information on Minos, including faked articles covering up the deaths of Jason, Amanda, Danny, and Mike, and found another surprising clue embedded infinity triangle logo for Minos. Hidden within it is what she believes are the coordinates to the company's location in Manhattan, asking Ben to join her in going there to take them down for good. Though it seems Minos is aware of their plans, seeing them testing a new escape room scenario set on a plane. The trial participants failed, all overseen by a shadowy figure on a video monitor, declaring that it does have a 4% chance of success. The figure, presumably Dr. Yu, approves, as it wouldn't be a fair game without giving them a chance, which sounds pretty much exactly like Jigsaw again. I honestly was surprised how similar this all ended up being to the Saw series. Yu basically is Jigsaw, testing people with tragic histories to fight for survival. Same exact thing. I mean, it's so much like the Saw series. The only thing they're missing at this point is a little puppet guy coming in on a scooter or something to deliver the game's rules. Hopefully they don't go that far. What? Wait, what? What the hell is that?
It is I, Puzzle Face. Are you interested in solving a puzzle?
Really, come on. This is exactly like Saw. You guys are killing me here. This is seriously the best thing that you guys could come up with.
Well, what did you expect? It is Sony after all.
Well, you got me there. Oh, Puzzle Face, I love you.
So this whole thing is being orchestrated by a well-connected and extremely well-funded shadowy corporation headed by Dr. Yu. They must have some serious power considering how much they can set up and dismantle their elaborate rooms, in addition to access to every detail of their players' personal lives. And because of this, Minos presumably would have to have some kind of connections to the government as well. How else could they possibly get so much info and be able to even pretend to be someone the players know, as we saw when sending the cubes, or even creating fake news stories and all the other insane feats they seem to pull off with ease. They have some serious power, and again money, to pull anything like this whole crazy operation off. But I would wager their lavishly wealthy audience provides more than enough income to keep the games going. Or it sure looks like it. I mean, geez. The ending implies they are going to somehow take over and retrofit a commercial airplane specifically to put Ben and Zoey back in the game. The logistics of doing this is baffling, but to Minos us, they're like, no big deal. As much of who they are is left in the dark, literally, as we never even see what Dr. Yu looks like, presumably a sequel would start to peel back the layers on the organization and who their audience is. Perhaps with Ben and Zoey returning to find them, or maybe they just die. One thing is for sure, since there would have been previous games, a sequel would definitely feature a new set of players in a new game with a whole bunch of crazy themed rooms and puzzles going through the whole same thing all over again, as the various escape rooms will obviously be the selling point of these movies. And since the movie only cost $10 million and made double that on its first weekend, I'll see you for Escape Room 2. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of this ending explained on Escape Room. You know, it's hard to avoid comparison to many movies that have come before it, but I did like their specific take of puzzle rooms. Even though the characters were of no substance, that's not really the point of a movie like this. We're just here to watch them get killed in elaborate scenarios one by one. And on this, the movie certainly did deliver. What did you guys think of Escape Room and its ending? What would you like to see in a potential sequel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.